Hello my lovely lunatics. Welcome to the channel or welcome back. This is Adult Bedtime Stories. Today we are reading one of your favorite books, The Secret History of the World by Mark Booth. We're on chapter 10, The Way of the Wizard. If you have not already, please hit the subscribe button, smash the thumbs up button if you're enjoying this book, or if you think it looks interesting. If you haven't been here before for this, ring the notification bell, and comment at some point your favorite part, I suppose, or what videos are your favorite. We also used to do like word of the day with a dictionary type thing, but I didn't feel like it was that popular, so I stopped doing it. So if you like that, you should let me know. Alright, Secret History of the World by Mark Booth, read by me, Luna. One more time, if you're not subscribed, what have you been doing with your life? Alright, Chapter 10, The Way of the Wizard. Zarathustra's battle against the powers of darkness. The life and death of Krishna the Shepherd, the dawn of the Dark Age. By the way, I'm really sorry if I pronounced things wrong, because I actually read this entire chapter live already, and the screen was black. The camera didn't work for some reason, so I deleted it. I should have just uploaded a picture, because it really doesn't matter if you can see me, as long as you can hear me, I feel like. But I deleted it, so here we are. But I don't think I learned how to pronounce things any better. In 5067 BC, in the region we now call Iran, the birth of a great new leader was foretold. We should picture his mother living in a small agricultural community like the one unearthed at Kadal Hayat. It was in the depths of an exceptionally harsh winter when the plague struck. Tongues were wagging in the community, accusing the young woman of witchcraft, claiming the storms the plague were her doing. Then in the 5th month of her pregnancy, she had a nightmare. She saw an immense cloud, and from it emerged dragons, wolves, and snakes that tried to tear her child from her body. As the monsters approached, the child spoke from inside her womb to comfort her, and as his voice died away, she saw a pyramid of light descending from the sky. Down this pyramid came a boy holding a staff in his left hand and a scroll in his right. His eyes shone with inner fire, and his name was Zarathustra. There were different schools of thought about the dates of Zarathustra. Some writers of the ancient world placed him at approximately 5000 BC, while others, such as Plutarch, at 600 BC. Again, this is because there was more than one Zarathustra. The birth of the first Zarathustra unleashed storms of hatred. The king was enthralled to a circle of sorcerers who persuaded him the boy must die. He went to the young mother's house and found the baby alone in his crib. The king was determined to stab the baby, but as he raised his hand, it became mysteriously paralyzed. Later, he sent one of his servants to kidnap the child and abandon him in a wolf-ridden wilderness. But the pack of wolves the king hoped would tear the child into pieces saw something in his eyes and ran away terrified. The child grew to be the youth of his mother's dream. But the forces of evil knew their greatest enemy had come down to earth. They were just biding their time. The age of Gemini was one of division. It was no longer possible to live safely in paradise, as people had lived in the Indian epoch. If the Indian epoch had been a recapitulation of the heavenly time before the separation of earth and sun, this new Persian epoch was a recapitulation of the fiery period when the dragons of Lucifer had infected life on earth. Now the forces of evil reasserted themselves, led by Ahriman, the Satan of Zoroastrian tradition. The cosmos was invaded by hordes of demons that darkened the heavens. Demons thrust themselves between humans and the higher echelons of the spiritual hierarchies. If the Indian epoch was the time when the secret physiology of humankind was imprinted on human memory, then this Persian epoch is the time we look to for knowledge of demonology. The hosts of demons against which Zarathustra led his own followers were also classified by him. These form the basis of classifications that the secret societies use today. At this turning point in history, people began to feel insecure on a level that today we call the existential. They were less sure that they lived in a cosmos that was ultimately benevolent, where everything would turn out right in the end. They began to suffer for the first time the species of fear that Emily Durkheim named enemy, fear of the destructive chaos that creeps in at the margins of life, that may attack us from the darkness outside the encampment, or from the darkness that overwhelms us when we are sleeping. It may also lie in wait for us when we are dead. When we fall asleep, we lose animal consciousness. In the teachings of the secret societies, Animal consciousness, or spirit, is pictured floating out of the body in sleep. This has two main consequences. First, without the animal element, our body returns to a vegetating state, no longer shaped by the agitations of animal consciousness or by the wearying effects of thought. The bodily functions are renewed. We wake up refreshed. Second, detached from the sensory perceptions of the body, the spirit enters an alternative state of consciousness, which is an experience of the sublunary spirit world. In dreams, we perceive the spirit worlds, where we are approached by angels and demons and the spirits of the dead. Or at least, that is what humans experienced in the time of Rishish. By the time of Zarathustra, human nature had become enmeshed in matter, so corrupted that dreams had become chaotic and difficult to interpret. They were fantastical now and full of strange, distorted meanings. Still, dreams might contain promptings by spirits, fragments of past lives, even memories of episodes from history. In deepest sleep, the third eye may open and peer into the spirit world, but on waking we forget. After years in exile, the young Zarathustra felt the need to return to Iran. On the border, he had a vision. The gigantic shining creature of spirit came to meet him and told him to follow. Zarathustra had to take 90 steps to the spirit's gigantic 9, as the spirit swept over the stony ground, taking Zarathustra to a clearing hidden by rocks and trees. There a circle of 6 other similar spirits hovered above the ground. The shining company turned to welcome Zarathustra and invited him to leave his physical body for a while in order to join them. We have met these shining spirits before. They are the spirits of the sun, called the Elohim. They now prepared Zarathustra for his mission. First, they told him he must pass through fire without being burnt. Second, they poured molten lead, the metal of Ahriman, onto his chest, which he suffered in silence. Zarathustra then took the lead from his chest and calmly gave it back to them. Third, they opened up his torso and showed him the secrets of his inner organs, before closing him up again. Zarathustra returned to court and preached what the great spirits had revealed. He told the king that the sun spirits who created the world were working to transform it, and that one day the world would be a vast body of light. The king he was addressing was a new one, but like his predecessor, he was in thrall to evil ministers. He did not want to hear this good news and let his ministers persuade him to have Zarathustra thrown in prison. But Zarathustra escaped from prison and also from attempts to murder him. He lived to fight many battles against the forces of evil, battles where he pitched his magic powers against the powers of evil sorcerers. Later he became the archetype of the wizard, with a tall hat, cloak of stars, and an eagle on his shoulder. Zarathustra was a dangerous, somewhat disconcerting figure, prepared to fight fire with fire. He led his followers to secluded grottos, hidden in the forests. There in underground caverns he initiated them. He wanted to provide them with the supernatural powers needed to fight the good fight. We know about this early mystery school because it survived 5 millennia underground in Persia before resurfacing as Mithraism, an initiatory cult popular among Roman soldiers, and then again in Manichaeism, a late mystery religion, which included St. Augustine among its initiates. Zarathustra prepared his followers to face Ahriman's demons, or asuras, by terrifying initiation ordeals. He who fears death, he said, is already dead. It was recorded by Menipus, the Greek philosopher of the 3rd century BC, who had been initiated by the Mithraic successors of Zarathustra, that after a period of fasting, mortification, and mental exercises performed in solitude, the candidate would be forced to swim across water, then pass through fire and ice. He would be cast into a snake pit and cut across the chest by a sword so that blood would flow. By experiencing the outer limits of fear, the initiate was prepared for the worst that could happen, both in life and after death. An important part of this preparation was inducing in the candidate conscious experience of the separation of the animal part of his makeup from the vegetable and material parts, as happens in sleep. Equally important was to experience the separation of the animal from the vegetable part, as happens after death. In other words, initiation involved what we today sometimes call an after-death experience. By the act of leaving the body, the candidate knew beyond any possibility of doubt that death is not the end. People who learn how to dream consciously, that is to say, with the ability to think and exercise willpower, we normally only enjoy in waking life, may develop powers which are supernatural by today's definitions. If you can dream consciously, then you are on the way to being able to move about the spirit worlds at will, communicating freely with the spirits of the dead and other disembodied beings. You may perhaps learn about the future in ways which might otherwise be blocked. You may be able to travel to other parts of the material universe and view things, though you are not bodily present. So, called astral travel. A great 16th century initiate, Paracelsus, who, as we shall see, has some claims to be the father of both modern experimental medicine and homeopathy, said he was able to visit other people in their dreams. Dreamscape? We will also see that many great scientific discoveries have been revealed to initiates while in this alternative state of consciousness. Supernatural means of influencing minds is another of the gifts that initiation may confer. Initiates I have met have undoubted gifts of mind reading way beyond the abilities of skeptical scientists to reproduce in cold reading experiments. Similarly, science has only the flimsiest question begging explanations for hypothesis. This because, though it may be abused by popular entertainers, hypothesis was originally and at root remains an occult practice, ultimately explicable only in mind before matter terms. It originated with the Rishish of India and in techniques practiced during the process of initiation by the temple priests of Egypt. In the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the power of influencing others' minds is one of the powers called Vibhuti. Mind influence was used for benevolent purposes, but as the world became a more dangerous place, it would be used for both defense and attack. We saw earlier how in mind before matter philosophy, the way you look at someone can affect them at a subatomic level. The coiled cobra representations of the third eye and the forehead of Egyptian initiates indicate that it can reach out and strike at what it perceives. In the 17th century, the scientist and alchemist J.B. van Helmont wrote of humans having the ability to kill a horse at a good distance, simply by staring at it. From the 18th century onwards, European travelers in India were amazed by the ability of adepts to throw anyone into an immediate state of catalepsy just by looking at them. The story of one 19th century traveler was recorded by George Eliot's friend, the initiate Gerald Massey. This traveler had been mesmerized by the gaze of a serpent. He was sinking deeper and deeper into a somnambulic sleep under its fascinating influence. Then someone else in the party shot the snake, breaking its power over him, and he felt a blow to the head as if he too had been struck by a bullet. Travelers in the 20th century reported tales of wolves that were able to freeze their victims and prevent them from crying out, even when the victim was unaware that he was being watched. In living memory, in a small town called Crowborough, less than 6 miles from where I write, resided a local wise man and healer called Pigtail Badger. The villagers were afraid of him because it was said that this tall, heavy-set, fierce-looking man could stop others in their tracks just by looking at them. It was said that sometimes he would do this to farm laborers, then sit and eat their lunches in front of them. It's not so scary. The most important initiation teachings concern the way the spirit worlds are experienced after death. This was not because a candidate would have doubted there is life after death. Such a thought would have been unthinkable then, but because they feared what their own experience would turn out to be. In the first instance, they feared that demons which they have evaded in their lifetime were lying in wait. Initiation showed candidates how to navigate the after-death journey safely. In sleep, as we've just seen, the animal spirit leaves the vegetable and mineral parts of the body behind. In death, on the other hand, the vegetable part, which orders the basic life functions, leaves the animal spirit. The vegetable part of human nature has many functions, including storing memory, as the vegetable part detaches from the material body. Both begin to disintegrate. This disintegration of the vegetable part causes the spirit to experience a review of the life just completed. The vegetable part dissipates and detaches itself from the animal spirit in a matter of days. Then the spirit passes into the sublunar sphere. There it is attacked by demons, who tear from it all impure, corrupt, and bestial desires, all evil impulses of will. This region, where the spirit has to endure this painful process of purification for a period lasting approximately a third of the time spent on it, is called purgatory in Christian tradition. It is the same place as the underworld of the Egyptians and Greeks. It is the Kamaloka, literally region of desire, of the Hindus. There is an extraordinary saying attributed to Meister Eckhart, the 13th century German mystic: if you fight your death, you'll feel the demons tearing away at your life. But if you have the right attitude to death, you'll be able to see that the devils are really angels, setting your spirit free. An initiate has the right attitude to death. He sees behind appearances and knows that demons in their proper place perform an invaluable role in what we might call the ecology of the spirit world. Unless the spirit is purged in this way, it cannot ascend through the higher spheres and hear their music, following its prodigal journey on earth. The spirit cannot be reunited with the Father until it has been purified. It is important to continue to bear in mind that the knowledge gained in initiation is not dry or abstract, but existential. The initiate has an out-of-body experience that is shattering. From lunar sphere, the disembodied spirit flies upwards to the realm of Mercury, from there to Venus, and then on to the Sun. Then the spirit experiences, as the Greek orator Aristides put it, a lightness which nobody who has not been initiated could either describe or understand. It is important to continue to bear in mind that this teaching was common to mystery schools of all cultures in the ancient world, and has been perpetuated in the modern world by the secret societies. From the Egyptian Book of the Dead through the Christian Kabbalah of the Pistis Sophia, through Dante's Media, forward to modern works such as Le Petit Prince by the 20th century French writer Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the secret doctrine is maintained, sometimes in books only initiates may read, and sometimes hidden in plain view. In the ancient text, the initiate is told the secret names of the spirits who guard the entrance to every sphere, and sometimes to secret handshakes and other signs and formula needed to negotiate entry. In the Pistis Sophia, these spheres are envisaged as made of crystal, and the entrance keepers of these spheres as archons or demons. In all the ancient religions, the being who guides the human spirit through the underworld and helps negotiate the way past the guardian demons is the god of the planet Mercury. But the initiates of the mystery schools kept an even stranger secret. Halfway on the journey through the spheres, there's a swap. The task of guiding the human spirit upwards is taken over by a great being whose identity may perhaps be a surprise. In the later part of the spirit's ascent through the heavenly spheres, the guide who lights the way is Lucifer. In the spiritual ecology of the cosmos, Lucifer is a necessary evil, both in this life, because without Lucifer, humans could feel no desire, and in the afterlife. Without Lucifer, the spirit would be plunged into total darkness and fail to understand the ascent. The 2nd century Roman writer Apuleius wrote that in the process of initiation, the spirit confronts the gods of heaven in all their unveiled splendor, and with all their ambiguities removed. The spirit ascends through the spheres of Jupiter and Saturn, passes through the sphere of the constellations, and is finally reunited with the great cosmic mind. It has been a painful, confusing, and tiring journey. Plutarch writes, but finally a wondrous light shines to greet us, beautiful meadows full of singing and dancing, solemnity of sacred realms and holy appearances. And the spirit must begin again the descent through the spheres. Preparatory to the next incarnation, as it descends, each sphere grants the spirit a gift which it will need when re-entering the material plane. The following account has been compiled from fragments of ancient tablets, dating perhaps as far back as the 3rd millennium BC, excavated in Iraq in the late 19th century. The first gate he passed her out of, and he restored to her the covering cloak of her body. The second gate he passed her out of, and he restored to her bracelets. The third gate he passed her out of, and he restored to her binding girdle of her waist. The fourth gate he passed her out of, and he restored to her ornaments of her breast. The fifth gate he passed her out of, he restored to her necklace of her neck. The 6th gate he passed her out of, he restored to her earrings of her ears. The 7th gate he passed her out of, he restored the great crown of her head. Even today, every child is reminded of these gifts in the fairy story Sleeping Beauty. The human spirit still responds strongly and warmly to the story, experiencing it as true in a deep sense. But in order to understand the esoteric content of Sleeping Beauty, it is necessary to think in an upside-down sort of way. The story relates that at the party to celebrate her birth, 6 fairies give the princess gifts to help her have a happy and fulfilled life. The 7th fairy, who represents Saturn or Satan, the spirit of materialism, curses the child with death, which is commuted to a long period of sleep. These 7 fairies are of course the 7 gods of the planetary spheres. What is upside down and the other way around about the story is that by the deathly, dreamless sleep, which is the curse of the evil fairy, is meant life on earth. In other words, because of the intervention by Satan, humans gradually lose any consciousness and eventually any memory of their time among the heavenly hierarchies. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. In this story, then, the party at the beginning of the narrative must be understood as taking place in the spirit world, and it is only when Beauty falls asleep that she is alive on the material plane. When she awakes, she dies. In fact, we have already seen a similar paradox in the story of Cyrus, most of which takes place in the spirit world. When Osiris is nailed in the coffin that fits him like skin, it is his skin. He is only dead to Isis when he is alive on the material plane. These stories show how both this life and the afterlife are ruled by the planets and stars. They should alert us to another very important dimension. Initiation prepares the candidate for meetings with the guardians of the different spheres, both on the way up and on the way down. If these teachings are imprinted well enough on the individual spirit, this will ultimately prepare the spirit for conscious participation with the higher spiritual beings in preparing him for a new incarnation. The key word here is consciousness. Initiation involves forging a consciousness, working relationship, disembodied spirits, and an existential knowledge of the way they work in our lives and our afterlives. It reveals the way they operate when we are awake, when we dream, and we are dead. We have seen that the histories we have been examining, such as the trials of Hercules, are structured according to different astronomical cycles, the journey of the sun through the months of the year, and its procession through the galaxies. The point is that the same patterns of the structural life on Earth also structure the spirit worlds. Hercules and Job suffered trials in their earthly lives that have been in the history of the world. They will also have to suffer the same trials in the afterlife, unless they can learn to become conscious of them. And if they can't, they will also have to suffer them in their next incarnation. This is the aim of initiation, to make more and more experience conscious, to roll back the boundaries of consciousness. In our individual lives and collectively, we go round and round in the circles traced out for us by the planets and stars. But if we can become conscious of these circles, if we can become conscious of the activity of the stars and planets in our lives in a most intimate way, then we are, in a sense, no longer trapped by them. We may rise above them. We are moving now, not in a circle, but in an upward spiral. Zarathustra wore a cloak covered with stars and planets as a mark of the knowledge that the great spirits of the sun had taught him. This was knowledge he passed on in initiation when candidates re-entered the body. Following their out-of-body experience, they were enabled by Zarathustra to explore the interior workings of their bodies in ways that, thousands of years later, people would only be able to rediscover through autopsies. Again, the difference was that the ancients used to seeing life as subjectively as possible did not know human anatomy in an abstract conceptual way, but rather they experienced it. This was how the ancients knew of the pineal gland long before it was discovered by modern science. At the transition from the 6th to the 5th millennium BC, humankind began to construct the great stone circles that survived to this day. In the same way that the withdrawal of the gods during the Indian period had forced humankind to think about ways of following them, now the obscuring of direct guidance from the gods made it necessary for humankind to discover new ways of seeking that guidance. Again, humankind was being drawn out of itself. As the initiator of these stone monuments, Zarathustra can be seen as a sort of post-flood mirror image of Enoch. The Megalithic stone circles, which began to spread throughout the Near East, Northern Europe, and Northern Africa, are intended to measure the movements of the heavenly bodies. In the 1950s, Professor Alexander Thom of Cambridge University first realized that megalithic stone monuments across the world are constructed according to a common unit of measurement, which he called the megalithic yard. This has since been verified by wide-range statistical analysis of monuments. Recently, Dr. Robert Lomas of Sheffield University has shown how it was that this unit of measurement was derived with astonishing accuracy in different parts of the world, a pendulum swinging 360 times during the time it takes for a star to move through one of the 360 degrees into which the sky's dome divides, will be exactly 16.32 inches long, which is exactly one half a megalithic yard. Because the ancients looked to the stars and planets as the controllers of life on Earth, they naturally defined their original mathematical measurements of the physical world by reference to these heavenly, which is to say spiritual bodies. Therefore, mathematics in its origins was not only holistic in the sense that it took into account the size, shape, and movement of the Earth in its relation to the heavenly bodies, but it was also the expression of a spiritual impulse. Evil powers always threaten to destroy Zarathustra. There are poignant reminders in the small mountainside shrines of of Zoroastrianism today, where flame is kept alight but in permanent danger of being snuffed out. At the age of 77, Zarathustra was murdered on his own altar. Shortly before the end of the 4th millennium, Krishna was born. The year was 3220 BC. This shepherd and prophet was in some ways a forerunner of Jesus Christ. We shall see shortly how Krishna, Osiris, and Zarathustra are depicted attending the Nativity, albeit in disguise in famous Renaissance paintings. He is not, of course, to be confused with the war god Krishna, the earlier Atlantean Krishna who fought in an epic battle to defeat the Luciferic forces of desire and delusion. Now these forces had sunk deeper into human nature and degenerated into a desire for gold and for the spilling of blood. A new savior was needed. A mother-to-be, the Virgin Devaki, had been increasingly beset by strange visions. One day she fell into a deep ecstasy. She heard a heavenly music of harps and voices, and in the midst of a bright flashing of mirrored lights the sun god appeared to her in human form. Overshadowed by him, she lost consciousness altogether. In time Krishna was born. Devaki was later warned by an angel that her brother Kansa would try to murder the boy, so she fled the court to live among shepherds at the foot of Mount Meru. Kansa was a child killer, hunting down the child of the poor. He'd even done it while still a child himself. Now he sent a giant red-crested snake to kill his nephew, but Krishna was able to kill the snake by stamping on it. A female demon called Putana, whose breasts were full of poison, pulled him to her, but Krishna sucked on her breast with such force that she crumbled down dead. Kansa continued to persecute his nephew, trying to hunt him down like a wild animal, but as Krishna grew to manhood, he was protected by shepherds and hid in the hills and the forests, where he preached a gospel of non-violence and love for all humanity. Return good for evil, forget your own suffering for another's, and renounce the fruit of your works. Let your works be its own reward. Krishna was saying things no one had ever said before. When these teachings reached Kansa, they enraged him further, tortured him in the very depths of his spirit. Among Krishna's many titles are the Coward and the Lord of the Milkmaids. He enjoyed a simple country life, preaching but avoiding direct confrontation with Kansa. The local milkmaids were all madly in love with the slender youth. He liked to play the flute and dance the dance of love with them. On one occasion he watched them as they went to bathe in the Yamuna River, then stole their clothes and climbed up a tree where they could not reach him. On another, he was dancing with many milkmaids who all wanted to hold his hands, so he multiplied himself into many forms so that each could believe she held the hand of the true Krishna. One day he and his brother entered Kansas city of Mathura, disguised as poor country people, in order to take part in an athletics festival. They met a deformed girl called Kubja, carrying ointments and perfumes to the palace. When asked by Krishna, she readily gave him some, though she could by no means afford it, and he cured her of her deformity and made her beautiful. But Kansa had not been fooled by the brothers' disguise, and when they entered the wrestling competition, he had 2 giants primed to kill them. If they failed, an enormous elephant was set to trample them to death. In the event, Krishna and his brother turned the tables on all of them and escaped. Finally, Krishna decided to discard all disguise, to come out of hiding to confront Kansa. When he re-entered Mathura, Krishna was acclaimed as its savior by a populace that showered him with flowers and garlands. Kansa was waiting with his retinue in the main square. "You have stolen my kingdom," said Kansa. "Kill me." When Krishna refused, Kansa had his soldiers seize him and tie him to a cedar tree. He was martyred by Kansa's archers. With the death of Krishna in the year 3102 BC, the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, began. A yuga is a division of a great year, there being 8 yugas in a complete processional cycle. In both Eastern and Western traditions, this great cosmic shift began in 3102 BC and ended in 1899. As we shall see in Chapter 24, Freemasons commemorated the approaching end of the Kali Yuga by erecting gigantic monuments in the center of the great cities of the Western world. Most people pass by these familiar constructions unaware that they are beacons for the history of philosophy proposed in this book. In the gathering darkness, a light appeared. As Krishna died, another great personage was growing to adulthood, a light bearer, who incarnated just as 3,000 years later, Jesus Christ would incarnate. We shall examine the life and times of the incarnated Lucifer in the next chapter. So that's the end of chapter 10. The next chapter is chapter 11, Getting to Grips with Matter. So that, my darlings, was The Secret History of the World by Mark Booth. If you have not already subscribed, what are you even doing with your life? If you liked the video, please smash the thumbs up button, ring the notification bell so you get notified when I upload and you don't miss chapter 11, and comment something about the chapter or your favorite book that we're reading on Adult Bedtime Stories, because favorite books get priority. Analytics show that this is the favorite book. That's where I'm getting that from. And some comments. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I love you so much, and until next time, stay classy, content creators and viewers. XOXO.